Hello and welcome to the brand new Give Us Time podcast series. During this series, we'll be talking with our ambassador, Scotty Darroch, about his life in the military. For those of you who don't know who Scotty is, Scotty served for 10 years as a corporal and training instructor in the Army Royal Logistic Corps. Joining us alongside Scotty is the Give Us Time managing director, Rupert, Forrest, an Army veteran who served with the Black Watch. The first question we're going to go and ask today is towards Scotty. And basically, Scotty, can you go and tell us a bit on how you began your military career?
Hi everyone. Yes, how I began my military career. It was kind of a difficult path leading up to joining. But the main thing for me to join the army was I was presented with two options when I was at the rugby club in Dumfries. It was either one of the managing directors said to me, "Young Darroch, you've got two choices. One is to go to jail the way you're going, or the other is to join the army." So I heeded his advice, and I went down to the careers office and I signed up into the club, I suppose.
How old were you?
I was 18, 17 and a half, 18, I think, when I joined in the Royal Logistic Corps.
So what was it like then? What was, as an 18-year-old first going in, what was it like?
Well, basic training, like anything, you get stripped of everything. Your home life kind of disappears, it gets put on hold, and you're given or presented with a new sort of family. And that family is called a directing staff, or as we call them, corporals or staff, or sir or ma'am. And what they say kind of goes. Your clothes, civilian clothes, are given away or taken away, and you're given uniform to put on. You get told when to eat, you get told when to run, you get told when to sleep. Well, they tell you you're supposed to go to sleep, but you have to do things to make sure the room's intact for the morning. But then that was just a wake-up call, that was just them getting you to be in a position where, one, you can listen to orders, two, you can follow orders, and three is be a body of men or women to move from one part to another. And yeah, definitely it was an eye-opener in basic training. My basic training was down in Purbright in Surrey. I don't know about you, Rupert. I don't know where your basic training was.
Well, I was quite lucky. Strangely, and Scotty and I've known each other for a while now, but slightly similar in some ways, in that I was at school, finished my A-levels, and luckily had a place at Nottingham University to read psychology and zoology. And it wasn't because of my brains. I was just quite a good rugby player. And that's actually the link. And I thought, am I going to go to university and play rugby for 3 years, or get on with joining the army, which is what I always wanted to do? So I headed off to Sandhurst down in Surrey and did my training there. And it sounds exactly the same. Actually, I just remember being a number, and I really hated being a number. Did you have that problem?
Yeah, it was either a number or crow or whatever they wanted to call you.
Yeah, yeah. But everything you did, you had a bloody number on you, and yet for the first bit, and it was just, I am not just 24531436 Officer Cadet Forrest. And I remember that number now. Everything was about this bloody number, and you were just a person in green and a number. But it did have a purpose, and it stood me in good stead. And I think Scotty too. I by the end of it, it was great. At the time, it was pretty horrific, really.
Yeah. It's absolutely a massive culture shock. And people say anything different. If some people's, like my mother was a nurse in the RAF, so before I went into the army, I did all the ironing. I knew how to wash my clothes. I knew how to polish shoes. So that bit was okay. Learning to learning to keep the mouth shut was quite a hard skill to master. Don't do as I say, do as I do. But it was, I had my bell rung a couple of times in training for speaking when I should have been listening. But hey, it's all part of the game. You play a game for the time the training's up, and then you move on to either your trade training. Like I went then up to Leckensfield, where I did all my driver training, And then after 3-4 months of advanced driver training, then I got posted then to 8th Transport Regiment in Catterick in the Royal Logistic Corps. And again, too, being from with a troop of guys and girls, do your training, and then that's it. You end up, your boxes are delivered, or MFO are sent up to Catterick, to the quartermasters. You tip up at the gate, show your ID card, you're a newbie, report down, see the squadron sergeant major, march in to the brass line on the floor, make sure your feet are perfectly correct to it. And then that was it. I got issued a troop, met the troop staffy, troop officer, and then got given accommodation. So the next couple of days was like find my feet in that. And then like basic training again, you don't know anybody. You may have heard some rumours of people that you can keep in touch with or that might help you on your way. But other than that, it's just get in, get stuck in with the job that you signed up for, and see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite an interesting connection, is what we were speaking about before we started recording this, because obviously Scotty and Rupert, as they said, they know each other. Scotty grew up in Dumfries, and we were just speaking about quite a traumatic experience that happened with Scotty when you were 12 years old, did you go and say?
Yeah, that was right. I was just asking Rupert if he had ever been or was involved with the help and support of the logistics side of the Lockerbie disaster. I was 12-year-old, and about 10 past 7, I was on my way back from Lockerbie just about 10 to 7, I was on my way back with my father from Lockerbie Golf Course. And I think the plane got blown up and it landed in the town of Lockerbie. Well, some of it landed in Lockerbie. The wing and the fuselage went through, I think, Sherwood Crescent. And I remember driving in my dad's car, and I was a little tiny radio, and we heard a boom, and it was like the earth shook. And I remember my dad turned around and said, we'll have to go back and see if we can help or find out what it was. And we got up there, and I didn't know what it was, but it was a massive crater, absolutely huge, dug out of the ground for maybe a football field and a half, gouge there. Things were on fire, cars were wrecked. I remember getting there and just trying to help. I remember my dad had a couple of torches because it was the 21st of December. So we were walking along, local police were there. And then about 10, 20 minutes, the Dumfries and Galloway Fire and Rescue and ambulance and police all landed. There was more emergency services there than you could shake a stick at. And I was just highlighting there as we were walking along, it was really, really sad to see, you know, as 12-year-old being put in a line, and then you're looking at, you know, kiddies' toys that are melted or burnt, or and then you had to either report it or anything that looked like some sort of wiring or anything like that. You had to call the policeman over, where photographs and x-rays were taken for investigations. But yeah, that was 12-year-old, and that's kind of stuck with me a little bit, especially when it comes to anniversaries and such. You know, if I stayed on for another 10 minutes, then, as I said, I would be a statistic with the 11 other poor people who died in that avenue right along in Lockerbie, and the other 270 passengers were later found and recovered. But it was a terrible act, and I was only asking Rupert if he was supplying any help or support.
Because Rupert, you were obviously currently serving in the army at that moment, and do you want to kind of, you know, tell us what you were going and mentioning?
Yeah, well, I had to look it up because I'm getting so ancient. So I was actually based in Berlin at the time, and I was coming back with my wife and brand new baby back to Scotland to do a course in Warminster. But I missed the whole thing. But I did have a few friends of mine who were involved in, you know, they were crashed out, the military in Scotland, to try and, you know, assist the police, because it was such a big thing, and some of them were quite young lieutenants, and they were taking their troops up into the hills to try and, you know, quite a lot of the carnage, if I could put it like that, actually fell in farmland over some quite rough terrain over a very big distance. I mean, actually, Scotty was mentioning earlier, you know, I think the nose cone is about 3 miles from the village.
3 miles, yeah, that's right.
So yeah, so it had an effect on some of my friends, certainly, but on that occasion I wasn't actually involved in it, but it certainly made everybody think.
It certainly did.
Yeah. But I think my experience joining up was pretty similar as well. You know, I finished my basic training, went off to Warminster to do my infantry bit, where I was told everything I'd learned at the factory was wrong, and I had to learn a whole new load of, you know, rules and regulations and the way infantry did stuff, and then turned up in my platoon in Germany, Black Watch base in Berlin, Germany. Great place, living in this sort of weird Canadian camp in the middle of nowhere, and took over an armoured platoon where I was told, well, everything you learned at Warminster, actually forget it, because this is the way the Black Watch does it. So I was being sort of re-educated every few months. So I'd get, all right, I've learned all this, I'm brilliant, and then get, forget it, this is the way it's now done. So yeah, it was an experience, and you just soaked up information, and I got sorted out by the platoon.
Exactly, that's the way they do it. They mould you into a way of how things work in a squadron, a regiment, platoon. There's a certain way of working it and a certain way to follow what the people have done before you. So yeah, it's all right getting the basics of how to do things, but
yeah,
when you actually get a better understanding of how things actually move and work and tick as you get into the squadron, into the troop, and then you just learn and pick things up, as just Rupert, she said there too, and his platoon just kept him right. You know, that's, well, as right as he could be, I suppose. You know,
but it's funny because, you know, as you do, you're used to pitching in and you get trained. You know, you've got to, and it's your natural instinct anyway. And I remember getting back after Company O Group, and we were going out and patrol that night, and we were digging in. So I started digging the hole, and the radio op said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we're digging a hole." He said, "I can dig a hole. I can't write the orders. If you get the orders wrong, we'll be wandering around all night. You're going to eat and get some orders done, and I'll dig the hole." And I thought, right, okay, yep, I'll do what. But of course, he was right. You know, we all did what we could to make the thing work, and it did work. And I've really enjoyed the people. I think that was the main thing for me. Was the people. Didn't you think, Scotty?
Absolutely, it is the people. And you miss them terribly because, as I said from the start in basic training, you build a relationship where you know exactly who's on your left or the right, or who's in which vehicle, front, rear, and what goes on. And you live with these guys and girls for weeks and months and years, and several operations away. You do become close. And then when you move on or get posted, one of the things for me, Rupert as a platoon will be posted with the same men or move to different areas as in regiments. So we got posted all over the place. Yeah. So we got Catterick, Germany. Germany was the ideal place. I remember in basic training, and I said this when I spoke at the Give Us Time fundraiser, it was they give you a posting preference and you get to put 3 locations on where you would maybe like to be posted. So I remember putting Canada, Cyprus, and Germany. So that's how I ended up in Catterick, which it was absolutely. I don't know how that worked, but there you go. That was that. So I ended up in sunny Catterick. But the only good thing, just along the A66, up the road a little bit, and then I was back into God's country.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So you could fill out a form and request. Obviously, it didn't work out for you, Scotty, in this occasion. But the idea was that you could write where you requested to go. Obviously, Canada and Catterick are very different.
Slightly, but it began with C.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a little bit of we'll just give these guys a little bit of hope. But then we'll just fill out the form and then. No, you're going, Derek? No. Catterick? No, sorry, you made a mistake there. No. Up the road, up north you go, son. That'll do.
So
I think we all need that perception, don't we, Scotty? That, you know, that the poster is going to be influenced by our preference form. And you do, because it's the same for everyone in the military. You go, oh, I'd like to do this and that and this job next, and they go, nah.
Yeah, there's a big.
For me, it was where the regiment was. The regiment got posted around all over the place, and I'd go off and do a staff job somewhere, and then come back to the regiment, wherever it was, and then we'd move. The regiment would move, and I'd spend another year in the next place, and then get posted out. So I was getting sort of, it was quite frenetic at times. I think shortest posting was about 4 months in Turnhill, of which I spent a month in Canada and a month in London. So, Kate had Sandy. We half unpacked the house. I went off and did the stuff, and then we moved to Hong Kong. And you sort of go, yeah, fine, okay, that's what it was.
Poor Scotty, he Hong Kong, Canada.
Honest to goodness, it sounds like Rupert was on a busman's holiday.
Yeah.
And then some of us have to work for a living.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So we obviously, there's a level of, there's a fun side, I think, of as I think we've touched upon here within the military, but as with the military's purpose and is when they're called up. So I kind of move on now to Scotty, for your kind of first experience of war, which is a very, very sadly why we need the military. What was your kind of first experience of war? Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Well, in the 90s, it was the Iraq stuff was in the start of that, and then we thought there might have been something else coming up. But I remember when I got to Catterick, the first thing was the main deployment was going to be to Northern Ireland, a rulement tour of 6 months. Came across here to Northern Ireland in 1996, and that's when I kind of witnessed I put it, the worst that humanity could do to each other. I kind of witnessed that on a daily basis. And unfortunately, that kind of thing that I have seen and felt and experienced has stuck with me. So that was my first kind of major experience of conflict, I would say, but again, people on the United Kingdom. We forget Northern Ireland's part of the United Kingdom. And you're actually trying to stop one side destroy the other, basically, and it was destroying. Some of the stuff was absolutely brutal. Yeah. And that's the only word you could say. And Rupert mentioned it about in Lockerbie, the word carnage. It was carnage. The stuff that the guys were doing, both sides, it just wasn't nice. But that was my sort of. That's where I first got my trauma, I would say. I don't want to delve into it too much. But Rupert, you were over here as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I think in all, I did 4 tours. So I spent about 2.5 years. One was I'd spent a year resident, but overall about 2.5 years on ops in Ireland. And it sort of shaped my life, really. I was there as a platoon commander, young guy. I was a company ops officer down in the border, which was interesting. That was all helicopter work because the roads were dodgy. And then a bit of a resident tour, and then back into Belfast again for a final sort of 6 month there when I was, I suppose, company commander then. So I've sort of stepped through a number of roles there. And it's always very different. But actually, one of the things that, actually talking to Scotty about these things is, you are reliant. The Black Watch was reliant on medics. And we had a large number of RLC guys working with us and providing our transport and everything else, without which we wouldn't have got around. And we were quite a lucky battalion. Is it lucky? You never know. We took casualties, but we didn't have many fatalities, and which was great. But inevitably, people pick up under that sort of pressure, they see and witness things they really wouldn't have wanted to see, and in a way you take that on. I think I'm right in saying, Scotty, is you've seen it and dealt with it almost in a way so other people don't have to. You're trying to keep it away from the civilian population, so they don't have to think about these things.
Yeah.
I might have overemphasized that a bit, but there we are.
No, it was absolutely, it was really, really scary. And, as a 20-year-old lad, they don't teach you that side. You do training and you go and do exercises and get yourself ready to go. But from you just being there in the center of it and seeing it and feeling it, and when things are directed towards you, that's when there's no fear is a terrible thing. And I was probably scared out of my wits as a young 20-year-old boy. But now, looking at it now, Northern Ireland has changed dramatically over the years. Up Banner was on for so many years. It's now a few years. Londonderry was the UK City of Culture. It's 2014. It was, but it's things have came on leaps and bounds in Northern Ireland. Don't get me wrong. There's still small pockets of people that want to take it back to the old days, but there's a lot more that want to move on and progress, which is that's the idea behind the whole thing. Is, as you said, Alex, we're employed in the military to, one, serve our country, and two, protect it. And one of the things was we had to try and peacekeep in our own backyard just as much as anybody else's. And that was it. So we were trying there. But again, too, going back over things, military have made some mistakes while they were over here. But again, it's one of those things when it comes to a conflict. If you've never been at that place before, things are new, things are difficult. You just don't know, and you just pick it up as you go. But unfortunately, there was a lot of lives lost on both sides, which is always sad. But it's. I don't know if you've been over since. A lot of times, Rupert, have you been over since?
Yeah, I've been back. Sadly, just for court cases, not my own.
Or mine.
No, yours. No, and but that's the way of things. I have, because I love Google Earth. I don't know if you're a Google Earth person. I've had a look at some of what I'd call the old patch, as Scotty and I would know, and I've had a look at the patch, and actually, exactly as you're saying, Scotty, you look at the old photos of the place, and you go back there now, and you see, say, Turf Lodge. Was part of my bit for what a great place now. You look at it now, and it's nowhere. I mean, it's just changed beyond all comprehension.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. It's really nice that people are now living in much better housing. Looks like a nice place. And that's part of why we were there too, was to try and, even the fact we weren't particularly popular, I'd say, in that part of town, their lives are better. And there are more of them about because we were there than there would have been. And that's good. From my perspective, that's really good. And an achievement for everybody.
And again, too, for the police service of Northern Ireland now, the PSNI, what a lot of people don't realise was that the police only kind of went out when there was an army presence with them at one stage, because it was too unsafe for the police to go out. I remember going out on patrols and stuff and having a policeman, again, who could stop, search or arrest. And there was 12, 15, and then a policeman wouldn't go out unless he had an army support with them. It was just too dangerous even for the police. When Rupert was over before my time, it was probably
we'd have
a
5
bit livelier as well. So
we had 5 to get one policeman out. We used to take 5 teams of 4, so 20 guys, all terrorising around one police. Yeah, to keep him safe. So we'd go to the police station, pick him up, take him out, and then head back to our base. Absolutely. It was not. And, quite often you're out on your own. So actually, you had the powers of arrest, you could stop vehicles, you could question people and do all this stuff, which was, it was necessary at the time. And, it was great going back many years later and finding actually we were pretty well stuck in barracks for my last tour, and the police could go out on their own.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's great. It's a bit dull for us, but it was progress. And I was quite happy not to have the, shilling, half sixpence going on before I went on patrol. Scotty knows what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
What does that mean, Scotty? What's it?
We won't go there.
No, won't go there on here. But
there are a few moments, let's say.
As Rupert was saying, we're going in teams of 4. They were normally called a brick.
Yeah.
They were called a brick. 4 men, so it looked like obviously a brick patrolling, either a section commander, a few other guys. We had little things on our chest called the Violent Joker or the VJ. It was always beeping, and then you had to remember too, Alex, that when you got stopped or moved anywhere, you had to go into your position. So again, if you had to go firm, you had to check 5 meters. If you're there longer, check 20. And again, too, you're looking, as Rupert mentioned earlier, that when he was a bit on the borders, everywhere you had to fly is because they had snipers and they were blowing up cars as you were driving along the road. And there was big signs saying snipers at work. And they had illegal vehicle checkpoints and stuff. So it wasn't as safe. So flying was a very good option. And I think at one stage in Northern Ireland, it was nearly 20 or something thousand troops in the province at one stage. So it was quite a lot back in the day. But yeah, you used to go firm onto the ground. And then another thing the guys used to carry was sifters, white or brown sifters. It was like your radio jamming kit. So if you were walking by somewhere and someone had a radio control or some sort of way to make things enlarge, that would break up the signal. And again, all this kit weighs a ton. And again, the old NEBA vests, as we called them, the bulletproof vest, with a big square plate in the front. And when you ran, it used to slap you right in the chin. So you used to have a big rash all the way down here, which was good.
And it was hot in the summer. Running around in all this kit in the summer. Oh,
So going and moving from one war zone to the other, and kind of, you went from Northern Ireland, and then eventually both of you ended up in Kosovo. What was so Scotty, for you? What was the difference? Because obviously this isn't in the United Kingdom. This is a completely different place, and this is obviously for you after Northern Ireland as well. What was that like?
I remember going to Kosovo in '99, and we were staying in the electric factory just as you go into Pristina. Kosovo was again conflicted parts. Again, people wearing civilian attire. It wasn't the fact of militaries or armed groups or militias. It was local populations against populations, but it was still edgy enough as you were driving round about the city. It was pretty gnarly. You still had billions that were shot up, completely devastated, and people living round about it. Well, if I can just jump back a little bit to in '97, I went to Bosnia, and it was on a stabilization force. And out there as logistics, we were supplying some of the outstations with fuel, food, water, all the rest of the good things, or carrying missile systems on the back of the trucks, or even transporting troops. So it was a really massive eye-opener from seeing what ethnic cleansing from one side to the other was absolutely brutal, and people living in, you would see things that you wouldn't expect. Imagine over here people would be in an uproar, but that's just was the way of life. Again, I think as things move on, Bosnia or Macedonia or Split, apparently it's became a tourist attraction. So things are tourist hotspot. I think that everything or the infrastructure's all changed and moved on with peace a lot better. But going back to Kosovo, yeah, it was pretty gnarly. And again, too, you heard a lot of commotion going on at night time. And back then, too, we were in '99. We were living in tents. Remember, well, big old green 12 by 12s or 18 by 34, or horrible, wet, stinking tents, and you're living in camp beds, and it was over winter, and it was freezing, absolutely freezing. I remember jumping into one sleeping bag to go into another, and then my clothes were hung up above me on a bungee, and waking up in the morning and having to break your trousers to get them on, and then go and get a bowl of water that's just been, some poor buggers just let the old puffer billy outside. There's a big tank and it's dripped with fuel, and it go boom. You always know when someone's let it or put too much kerosene in it, and that heated up like an old dust can full of water. You have to go and get a bowl of that, give yourself a shave and a wash, and then get ready for the day's tasks that were given to you.
So that was for 6 months. You were living in, were you living in that tent for 6 months then, or?
Yes. Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, you've got into a little bit of detail about that, but compared to Northern Ireland, that must have been, that must have been quite. It
was like anything, you know, when you first move into a sort of area to take kind of set up and conduct bases, until the infrastructure gets put in place. That's what you slept in, or you slept in your vehicles, or if there was some sort of buildings you could maybe get in and take over and set up. That's just the way it was. I don't know when Rupert was there, but was it any different when you went there, Rupert? And
about 2 years after you. So by then the infrastructure was in, and we were living in the police station down in the city, which had the football arena at the back, Scotty, and that bombed out basketball sports centre. So yeah, but so it was mainly about protecting the population from itself and each other. And certainly when I was there, there wasn't much hostility towards us. I think we were seen, we had come in, we'd help them out, and we were there guarding people. You know, we had a block of flats that had Serbs, full of Serbs, which had RPG-7s fired at it, and occasionally people would have a go at trying to shoot people up. And we'd escort the kids on a bus down to the Serb school south of the city and escort them home at the end of the day. And if someone wanted to go shopping, they took a couple of soldiers from the base. But actually, I was quite happy going out. I could take my Warrior armoured vehicle. We kept a few of those just to show that we had the capability. And the sites were very good. And I was quite happy going out and that with my crew on our own. As long as people knew where we were and we were on the radio, you didn't feel like, former tours that Scotty and I have done, you didn't think you were going to get blown up or shot at every 10 seconds. Not that you were every 10 seconds, but that feeling had gone. So, and in a way, you were able to do more because a benign population will help you and talk to you and so on. So, yeah, fascinating. But again, much the same thing. It was all about the people, and we worked a lot more closely with the UN police this time and the Kosovan police than we did. And there were Russians at the airport and so on, so you met them in town occasionally. So it was a fascinating environment. We had a Norwegian battalion, I think, didn't we, to the north, Swedish battalion to the south, a Finnish battalion, and 2 British battalions. Yeah, so, well, when we were there. So, and that's just in one of the brigade areas. So it was a fascinating environment. And but I think I was in, by then the conditions were much better because the logistics supplies had been, proven and formed, and the accommodation was fine. Well, I even had a shower in my room. Didn't work.
Anyway,
yeah.
Honestly,
no, but it was great. So it was in this police station,
holiday,
and I had this room, and to have a shower, you just poured a bottle of water over your head.
Yeah.
Done. Job done.
But again, you were an officer. You probably got someone else to pour it over your head.
No. There were no takers, Scotty.
So, Scotty, so was Kosovo your last tour? Was that your last kind of overseas tour? And was that the beginning of the wind down of your military career?
It came back from Kosovo at the end of '99, and that's when things started to go awry a little bit. And I remember, I think it was 2001, I came back to Northern Ireland. There was another 6-month tour, and I was a covert driver for the EOD, which was the bomb disposal. Felix, the Captain 9 Lives, and there was 9 detachments at that time around the province, and I was assigned to Lisburn, which was headquarters, and to Armagh and Besbrook. And as Rupert will tell you, that was Armagh and Besbrook was like a bit like bandit country. You only went on the road for any certain things, but again, too, we'd be in the logistics and part of the bomb disposal team. I didn't work on anything that went bang or stopping it from going bang. I was there to transport mainly in CMVs, which was white vehicles, basically cars, and then driving at speed with either important people in the car or with kit and equipment that the teams need. So we were supplying the out units, basically. So there was many a times I was driving an old, like a Peugeot 4.5, and the boot was full of plastic explosives, weapons, the whole thing. But back then, again, too, we had a card that we had. It was an EOD card, and it was when you got stopped at a checkpoint with the police would open up your license like a normal. It was like Fablon papered license. You'd have your ID card on one side, so you'd look like a normal civilian, and then on the other, it had EOD. Please do not stop, basically, and signed by the chief constable and all the bits and bobs. So they didn't open your boot and find that it was like a fireworks display. So yeah, we moved all kit all over, and I went out on some of the jobs. There's a couple of jobs there that when Ato, who is the main bomb technician, dons a suit and goes out and has a look at a device, they have an infantry escort, which is a guy, obviously an infantry attached. So basically, he's keeping an eye, because that Ato is worth a lot of money, and for people to take that capability off the street would be devastating. So there was a couple of times I switched roles with our infantry escorts, and I went out and did that job because I found it quite exciting to have my boots on the ground again and actually just protecting something quite important. But seeing some good jobs go up and then come back down again was quite good. And then after that 6 months, I got a posting to Kinniga Logistics Base, and there I was in the training wing for my last 3 years in the army as a training instructor, taking guys on ranges and running a thing called MPCs, which was military proficiency courses, where we would take up 35, 40 junior NCOs, train them up so they become to either a level of section commander. Basically, they've got a basic or a better understanding than the basic soldier, and field craft and weapons and more leadership type roles, I would say. So I did that for 3 years, and then I left in November in 2004.
So you did, was that so 10 years altogether then?
10 years, just it was November. You probably maybe 10, 20 days shy of 10 years.
We'll round it up to 10 years.
Thank you very much.
But you sort of slightly undersold that job in that, there were you driving around essentially one of the best targets they could possibly have gone for. And there must have been, a lot of training. Were you having a lot of fun on skid pans and doing that sort of thing as part of the build-up, apart from the serious stuff, of course?
Yeah, absolutely. We were doing work. We had to go back to, back to Leckensfield and do advanced driving as such. But again, too, we just used the weather to advantage. When it was raining, we cleared certain parts of car parks, and then we put the back end of the vehicle onto skid pans or plates, and put the handbrake on and just drive so that the back end would go out. So we just practice different maneuvers. But again, yeah, it was a really good job supporting the ATOs in the different locations, making sure simple things that the guys' meal got there, the proper kit that they required for the task that they were doing, and giving them a bit of support. And again, when I was in that job, I was already trained up to be a training instructor, so I was doing their basic weapon handling tests. I was doing part of their yearly drills. I was doing their map reading tests. I was doing the first aid tests. I was doing other bits and bobs to assist them. So it was yeah, pretty good job. And you meet some really good characters, and I've met a few Queen's Gallantry Award. Rick, who's yeah, he lives down in Belfast. He's working with the PSNI at the moment. So he was he still is a fantastic character. Someone who can go down, and back then, Alex, there's a thing called a wheelbarrow. It's not what, again, you put your kit in and wheel it down, but it's a mechanical robot that comes out the back of the truck. It goes down, powered by a big battery, and it can open up like cameras and have a look at certain devices without the ATO actually getting close. So Rick he was out in a job, and he sent the first wheelbarrow down. It broke down, the battery died. The second one stuck on the ramp. One of the things the operators call it is the longest walk, where the operator has all the kit on, carrying a RASP, which is a device that jams all signals, and he does the longest walk on his own. Walks down to that device, which is still live, then disarms the whole thing on his hands and knees, 3 or 4 devices to make it safe for the guys to carry out their daily jobs, and being able to go out and support these sort of men and women. I found it quite fascinating, and you learn so much about that's what goes on. It's not the fact of these guys make it safe, but what they do is when they make it safe, they try and find out who made it and what sort of thing was activating something else in their technology. And some people have different signatures of how to make things and put things together, and it was quite interesting to see. And it was always a nightmare as well when you were back in getting your dinner or such, and then you go to the toilet and you open up the toilet lid, and there's a big massive bright light goes off, and it's the guys have set different devices around about the toilet, which was quite amusing to them. But it was quite handy that I was in the toilet when some of the big things happened, because it wasn't too far to go, which was really good. And I remember too, this is quite funny. The thing called the RASP that the operator takes down to diffuse, or not diffuse, but to stop some of the jam. I remember one of the lads was on a telephone call, and they were waiting to go and do something, or I think they had a bit of gym time to go and do, and he was on the phone. So they got this RASP out of the truck and put it outside his door and turn it on, and you could hear him chatting to his missus going, "Hello? Hello, love, are you still there? Hello?" Couldn't hear her whatsoever. Turned the thing off, put it back in the truck. "Are you ready?" Yeah. The signal broke up there. Oh, no idea how that happened. So it was in a way it was quite a fun job as well, and yeah, it was pretty damn good.
The thing that I've kind of got from this is the camaraderie that you get from the military. So I mean, first to Scotty, what made you decide to leave? What was the turning point? When did you? I mean, I know we will speak about in further podcasts some of the stuff that you went through, but at which point, when you were a training instructor, did you just go, "Nah, this isn't for me anymore"?
It was the part of when my grades and reports, as Rupert will testify, the officers have to write up your reports, and it goes on a grading system, and then it goes through a panel, and it's a lovely place. It goes up to Manning and Records, where they decide if you meet the right criteria criteria to be promoted and stuff. And I've no idea why. Even our colonel was contacting me and saying, I don't know why your grades were brilliant. We were putting you first to the regiment. Don't know why you're getting promoted, why you're not getting promoted. So that happened after a couple of years. And in my last year, I just decided, I said, listen, maybe my time is better spent with something or someone that's going to be more appreciative of my sort of job or my sort of role. So that was it. Once then you hit the button, well, back then you had to fill out the forms and get it signed. And that was your countdown clock for a year to sign off. And that was it. And that's when you have a year to put things into place and what you want to do on your resettlement as such. So you resettle back into civilian life. I chose the same path as my Sergeant Major at the time to graduate and become a bodyguard, and went to South Africa and did a 5 weeks close protection course in Ronan, South Africa. And that was it. And then, as I said, I finished in November in 2004, and then started a job in December 2004 and then went out to the Middle East and did other things with the British ambassador out in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, that was it. That's was the kind of decision, the main decision for me to leave. It wasn't the fact of, I did start to feel other things. I know that you were going to mention it in previous podcasts, but I started to feel a little bit unwell as when I was doing the close protection role as well. But previous to getting out, I started to feel a bit unwell. But we'll touch base more on that on a different podcast.
Yeah, we'll go into later. I think I think we need to cover a whole podcast on leaving the military, because I think that's such a big thing. I don't think we can just skim over that. So we will for everyone listening, we will actually speak more about what it's like leaving the military. So Rupert, kind of Scotty explained why his reasoning for deciding to end his military career. What made you decide to end your military career?
Well, I was very lucky. I had a string of wonderful jobs and worked with some great people. And then I filled in one of those forms that we were talking about, Scotty and I, earlier. Didn't get my first choice, should we say, and ended up again with some great people, but in an environment that, it wasn't the most entertaining job I'd had, and a lot of it was to do with options for change, as it was called earlier, but it was about a lot of it was about restructuring things and reducing the size of the army, and I seemed to be involved in picking apart something that I'd really enjoyed, and I found that quite difficult. And then I was working in an area which did all the human resource stuff as well, and they came up with this thing that anyone in the last 4 years of service, if they want to go to reduce the size of the army, then we'll give you a year's pay to get out. And I went, well, I'm going to be getting out anyway. I've had a great time, probably a good time to move on. So that's really was my driver. And I ended up in Edinburgh helping my wife's mother, or my mother-in-law, who needed a bit of help at the time, and was lucky enough to do some work being an event manager on the Royal Edinburgh Military Tea. So I got into art, darling, and it was fantastic. I could still meet the pipes and drums, and it was nice. So I still had that sort of quasi-military link, and I saw some of the guys. But it was really the people, don't you think, Scotty, that you miss in the end? It's that camaraderie, and it's that people do what they're going to. They tell you they're going to do something, and they do it. It's remarkable. But I found once I got out, people go, "Yeah, no, I'll crack that," and 2 weeks later they come out and you say, "Have you cracked that?" And they go, "Crack what?" And you go, "You said you'd do this." And it just doesn't happen. It's a mindset thing.
This is aimed at me. I'm joking.
No, it's not aimed at me, but you know what I mean.
There is aimed at you, Alex, to be fair. And the bit where he says people crack on, what he's saying is he's going to crack something over your head if you don't get it done.
I just add to everyone listening, no, give us time. Employees were harmed in the making of this.
Yeah, keep that in. I love that.
Yeah.
So both of you went and said, I think, we will touch on it in a future podcast about the transition. But how would you sum up your 10 years in the military? I mean, how would you sum it all up? And maybe what would you tell yourself before, a young Scotty? What would you go and tell him about it, or with all this experience you've learned?
Well, to sum up the 10 years, it was, for me, it was life-changing. Life-changing in the jobs that we did, and life-changing in something that years later has kind of affected me up to this date now. But yeah, life-changing would be my sort of summary of the brief 10 years that I did. But to tell a young Scotty who wanted to join the armed forces now, is that what I would say? Is that what you're saying, Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah, to tell a young Scotty who came to the door and asked me to join the armed forces, I would say certainly a good choice, as long as it wasn't the army. I think the RAF and the Navy would be a better career choice for someone joining up, I would say now. One, they'd probably see a bit more of the world. And two, I would say those kind of Navy and Royal Air Force were probably, they may get looked after slightly better, I would say. So for me, I would say maybe go down that sort of role.
So Rupert, same question to you. I mean, how would you sum up your time in the armed forces, and what would you be going and telling, yourself, right before you went and joined?
Yeah, I think I had all sorts of experiences which you couldn't possibly get in any other environment. Some of them were extremely exciting, if I can put them like that. Some of them were just, astonishing. I got to go scuba diving with my blokes in Hawaii, with the US Marine Corps. And sometimes, you'd be sitting in a snowdrift. I remember sitting in a snowdrift as a platoon commander training recruits, looking down at Edinburgh, and it was Baltic, and I could see the lights in the distance where I knew the pub was and all my mates. And at that stage I thought, I wonder if this was a good plan, but actually overall I had a great time, and most of that was about the people. And if I was going to do it again, and I would, well, I've actually got one son who's in the army, and he's loving it. But if I was going to do it again, I'd go, don't resist. I was argumentative. I was a teenager, and when I joined, I resisted stuff because Forrest knew best, and Forrest did this, and it made training so much more difficult because I was making it difficult for myself. All I had to do was do what I was bloody told to do, but I wasn't used to that concept. Once I'd got it, it was fine. So I think if you're going to do it, embrace it, and you'll get the most out of it. My dad started as a private soldier in the Argylls because he was signed up on national service. Had a great time, he really did, and it made me who I am. And yeah, no, I'd do it again.
Scotty, I'm seeing a lot of nodding over there. What do you want to add to this?
Absolutely. Well, hearing that Rupert was obviously scuba diving in Hawaii and stuff, when some people were still working. When I joined up, there was an advert on the TV, and Rupert will remember this. There was a guy who used to ski perfectly down a hill, and there was an arrow behind him. And the same guy in the distance was walking on a beach, hand in hand with a beautiful lady. And the same guy was doing something else, and it says, "Be like Frank." Join the army. I joined the army, and I've never met this bloody Frank. But the thing is, to be honest, Rupert, you've probably been like Frank more than anybody else, by the sounds of things.
No, I think
tour, Hong Kong, scuba dive in Hawaii. Yeah, dear God.
Yeah, yeah. But then, you know, I had to do quite a lot of time sitting under bushes for extended period of time when it was Baltic, as you did. So yeah, pros and cons. Pros and cons.
Pros and
I
cons.
had some lucky pros, you know.
Cons.
And
what about you, Alex? How did you manage? Let's turn this back on you now quickly. How did you come to get in to be in this unique position of working with this wonderful, bespoke, small military charity? Give us time.
I think for me, I've always wanted to work with a charity, and I think I think one of the biggest learning curves I've had is, I think, as someone who's never been in the military, never experienced it, I think people don't realise, especially the intensity, and I mean you are sacrificing a lot, and I think it's incredibly interesting. I think which is why we're doing this, to hear your sides of it all. One thing I do want to clear up though is you see all these things going on when you're sitting out there in the middle of a you're in a sentry position for your training, and you're sitting there in the freezing cold. What do you do in those little holes? You
don't want to know.
What are you doing in those little holes when you're sitting there just doing nothing? You're watching a fixed point. I mean, I know you're meant to go in there, sit there, watch the enemy, and then leave. How do you pass that time? Scotty's laughing away. I need to know, Scotty.
Yeah. It's. You want to lead on that one, Scotty?
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, obviously the main answer was to make sure that the people back in the harbour area are safe and secure, and you're observing your arcs of fire. Yeah, absolutely.
Observation. That's what it was called, wasn't it?
Yeah. How did we amuse ourselves? Well, we would maybe crack a couple of wee jokes, either share some sort of sweetie, or if someone was smoking, they would try and hide the little orange glow from a cigarette under a helmet or something else. But it was, we just kind of amused ourselves, really. Or, it depends on sort of place where you were. You had to, there was no such thing as bathrooms or bits and bobs. So we had to, basically you had to take what you put out with you in a bag and then carry it. So
now, Scotty, do you want to expand on that a little bit more for all our listeners there? You said you have to take out, you can leave nothing behind. So how do you make sure you leave nothing behind?
Black bags, to be honest. If you needed a pee, you'd pee in it, scoop out all the air, and then tie a knot on it. And again, too, if you had to defecate, or same thing, just bag it up, tie it, and carry it.
So your rucksack was obviously full of, to an extent, human waste then, for when
absolutely. Or you would find the troopies Bergen and maybe put it in the top part of his map case of a PLC Bergen, and he would have to carry that as well as his own, which was quite funny.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I'm afraid the realities of life come to the fore, but it makes a very good hand warmer, doesn't it, Scotty?
Absolutely, and your own is slightly better than someone else's.
We've spoken about both of your lives in the military. Scotty's, Rupert's are going to be better, because I want to know your favourite memory and moment from when you were in the military. Now, I know Rupert's got scuba diving and in Hawaii, and I know Scotty, when Scotty says in a car in Catterick, it's not going to be the same. But
actually, favourite moments vary. I remember going down as a young platoon commander, and I was going on my first exercise, and I had the complication of 4 vehicles and 4 crews, and this car pulls up, and out gets this young woman and this child, and we've got 2 seconds before we're meant to move, and wife gets that, husband appears, and the child walks for the first time that her dad's seen it towards the husband, and you just go, is this important? And but you can see it on their faces, and the whole team sort of stops. Whoa, that's amazing. And then it's right, got to go, darling. Charting card gone, into the wagons, off. Not going to see them for another month. But, you know, it's moments like that where you're involved in other people's lives that it makes, you know, real impact. And you think, I wonder if I'll be doing that one day. And of course you do. You know, you get married and yeah, there you are. But yeah, so actually, those are really the moments. Yeah, and you forget about the, you know, the helicopter crashes, all the unpleasant dramas that you get involved in.
Everywhere you go, there's always good parts, and you do kind of remember the good parts and the not so good parts. But that's like any job; you have good days and bad days, I suppose.
Yeah,
fun days. But in the military, it was because we were close knit and everybody was close together, and you had to rely on each other. That the sort of camaraderie and the closeness was that did carry a long way. And yeah, absolutely, there was good times. But
what do you think your favourite? Can you think of a favourite moment in particular, or is it, they're just too quite?
My favourite time would be I was watching a man scuba dive in Hawaii while I was. That was as you. Oh, look at that! Wouldn't that be lovely at some time? But obviously that was it. Yeah, that's my sort of best time in the military, I would say, is when I got posted over here and through a friend ended up at a wedding, and that's where I met my wife Joanne, or my wife to be Joanne. So that would be my best time that I've in the military, I can say.
I was
Can't beat that, Rupert.
No.
Brilliant.
No, absolutely. No, I was about to say, because I missed a bit earlier on, when you went to your regiment, my first thing was having to go down the morning after and to see the adjutant to sign on. And I remember we had a really tall commanding officer at the time and a really short RSS wee beast he was. And I arrived outside the office and there were two of us there. And I remember this tiny chap coming along with his RSM's badge and his stick, and he just looked us up and down very slowly, shook his head, and walked into the adjutant.
Yeah, back then too.
Not impressed. Not impressed. The RSM, you know, day one, not impressed.
Back then too, Alex, the RSM was the senior soldier, basically.
Yeah.
And you had soldiers and. Or other ranks and then officers, but he was the senior man. And I remember in Catterick, and you used to hear the big ammo boots clip up towards the squadron lines. And honestly, guys were hiding in tool bins and everything. And if you could get a brush and a duster, you'd be sweeping and polishing something at the same time. Because back then, you know, if something was wrong, you got the old you got the old telling off.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I
was going to jump back a little, quite a bit to the beginning, Pip. You know, we spoke about your first days and everything. I mean, when you go and join up, Scotty, were you still in Scotland in Dumfries, or were you sent all the way down into the? Because I know obviously Rupert, you were in the Black Watch.
Yeah.
So were you sent from? Were you just sent up into Scotland? Or?
No, I saw the regiment. The regiment only saw me to interview me before I went to Sandhurst, and then they had a Black Watch officer at Sandhurst who kept an eye on, you know, whether I was going to be a disaster or not. Don't comment, Scotty. And I didn't see the regiment until I was commissioned.
Just a little tip for anyone who isn't aware. Rupert, do you want to explain a little bit more about what Sandhurst is, just quickly?
Yeah, so Sandhurst, the officer training school, or the Rupert factory, as it's known. But essentially, you go through basic training. You do all the same stuff. It's a bit longer because you take it in turns. So when you're being taught section attacks, one of you will actually be the commander, having been taught how to do it, and you'll all get a turn being the commander of various attacks, and then, you know, they build it up. So eventually you have what they call the cadet government, and you have a company sergeant major, and you've got between commanders, and you rotate roles. So you get experience in each job, in each environment, and those are your tests, really. And you do all the other roles as well. So you might be carrying the machine gun or be the Section 2 IC that day, and have to carry out those responsibilities. So it's sort of doing the basic training with leadership over the top. And then, if you're infantry or, you're a logistics guy or girl, you'll go off and do your logistics training on top of that. And the same, I went off to Warminster and spent, 4 months living in a hole, basically. Well, two months of it was living in woods and holes. And the other 2 months was learning how to run ranges and do all that stuff, which were role specific.
So to quite an extent, even though you were both in the army, you both had incredibly different experiences within a degree then, which is, I think, quite interesting, because I think a lot of people assume everyone in the army receives, well, I for one assumed everyone in the army received the same training. I was unaware of the different level of Sandhurst, and forgive me again, where's the other one? Where did you go to, Scotty, then?
Mine was, when I first went to the careers office, was in Dumfries, and then after that they put you on a 3-day assessment training, and I had to go up to, as Rupert will know, Glencourse. Glencourse still exists, but Glencourse training centre, we had to run and do medicals and do a basic 3-day induction of what we're going to be experiencing, and then our 15-week course was down in Purbright, down in Surrey. So I had to jump on the wee train with an old rubbish wee suitcase and then travel down there and get off, I remember, Blackwood Station, and walk up to the guard room, and then that was it. That's when you just become a number.
Now, I mean, silly again question. I mean, so you were, sorry, Scott, you were 20 when you joined up, did you say?
Yeah, 17 and a bit, I think. 18, yeah. Was I in training for 18 or was it out? But yeah, thereabouts.
I mean, you're just 17, 18 years old, and you've got to get a train from Dumfries to Surrey. I mean,
Yeah, I should have been commissioned just for even doing that journey without being lost, and that was the.
Or doing Sandhurst.
Yeah, or doing Sandhurst. Yeah. Well, where in Sandhurst they probably miss out map reading, and the worst thing is you never give an officer a map, ever. That right, Rupert?
That's right. Yeah. They're quite good at GPS. Yeah. I think life's got a lot easier, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. No, I learned in the end.
So you spoke about they break you to remold you a little bit. How true would you say that sentence is? I mean, I've spoken to a few, obviously, soldiers throughout my time working with Give Us Time, and I mean, would you say that that's a true statement, or do you say that you just kind of, they're not breaking you, they're getting you into what the army is?
Well, they say that they ship you into shape quickly, and it has to be that sort of shock of arriving up and being that place, move there now, eat there, do this, because it has to be. At the end of the day, you're putting your life on your line to follow a set of instructions or orders. You've got to be able to react to that, and being a civilian straight then into military life, that is, you can't just take your time or do anything. It has to be that. And back then in the 90s, it was, that's the way they did it. That's the way they shaped you to become a soldier, and they only have a certain period of time to get you into that shape, and that's the way it was. And there was, if you didn't fit it, then you were booted out. It was, and the thing is, it was, I remember it was, yeah, you did. I'm probably painting the wrong picture here, but it was, you had to be at the right place at the right time with the right kit and learn and stuff. And if you got it wrong, by God, Daddy, did you get punished for it? and if you got it right, you didn't get punished. So, or a change parade or other bits and bobs. It was just you got things taken off. You weren't allowed to go to the NAFI or other bits and bobs. Or it was in a way it had to be that way for a reason, to get you into shape. And if you weren't willing to get into shape, then I don't think you should have been there anyway.
Rupert,
exactly the same. You know, if your kit wasn't up standing in the morning, it got launched, and that meant you were going to spend the whole of the next night doing it all again and getting all the chips out of your polish and God. So you sort of got all the basics right, and that made everything easier. But you didn't understand that initially, because you can't have right, double away over there and sort of, well, it's raining. You don't bin all the baggage, and then you get, and the job gets done. And that's what it's about. It's about having people who will react appropriately without, and quickly, and do the right thing. And you get that. And then once you're through the painful process, it works and you understand. But it's and that's why I said, if there's one thing that I'd tell myself is embrace it. Don't fight against the, well, I don't want to eat that meal, I want to have something else. Well, that's the meal, and you've got about 3 minutes to eat the lot, and if you haven't eaten it, then you're off on the next thing and you won't eat. So it's your choice.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it was, the style and the environment then was, you had to, and if they told you eat something, it wasn't for because they said it. You eat it because you're going to be on a tab for 8 hours carrying such and such, or you're going to be up all night, or you're going to be doing drill, or you're going to be doing ranges. And if you don't eat the right fuel, and that's what it is, fuel for your body, and then if you fainted or went down, or you weren't in the right frame of mind then to carry out the task. So again, too, it's being at the right place at the right time with the right kit and having the right energy and stuff, and sense of humor. I think sense of humor is a big thing too. Again, too, it's you look back at it now, we would laugh. As Rupert says, they launched the kit out the room. It was when I was there, you had to have your bed all set up, the bed block, and all your kit was all over, and your brassies were all done. And the training instructors I used to stand there and used to turn and go, right, Nolan was opposite me. He said, right, Darroch, throw Nolan's bed at the window. Okay, sir. And the whole bed went out. You could see Nolan's face going, try and get the boots to land upright. Try and get them to land perfectly. Nah. And then it was like Jones, Darroch's kit, window. So you just had to play the game, play the game. If they said jump, you said how high. And that's the way it was. And once they kind of get to know who the characters were, or the guys who would do it, they would lean on you a little bit more to maybe help some of the others to progress a lot quicker. But
they had a stick, didn't they, with little red bits at the end, and your bed block had to be exactly as per the stick. So a lot of us, if you couldn't be bothered to do your kit, you'd sleep in your sleeping bag under the bed with your bed made up.
Yeah, you wouldn't sleep in bed. You'd sleep on the floor. Yeah,
and you'd get a couple of days, and in would come the self-sergeant, and he'd measure it up, and it'd be perfect because you'd see it, and he'd go launch, because he knew that you were sleeping under the bed. So and he'd go sleep in the bed set. Right, staff. So it was good. It was an education, and it didn't do me any harm.
No, it did not. As I said, the character building, it certainly does make you a bit more. You appreciate life a lot better. You look at things through a different set of glasses. It was there. It was there to serve a purpose, and it was there to do a job at that time. Now things today are probably slightly different, but again, with modern society and stuff, they're still there to produce men and women to do a job for this time.
Yeah,
that's the way it is.
Even if they don't have to eat bacon grill anymore.
What's a bacon grill?
It was a tin of something called bacon grill that was sort of meaty, wasn't it?
Kind of meaty.
And
Dog
you
food would be better than bacon grill.
and you could cook it in the tin on a hexi block burner, and it would get crisp around the outside, and then you could slice it, and you just didn't eat the bottom bit that had the metal bit that had come off the tin on. It's brilliant on an icy morning when there was nothing else. Oh,
Or
fantastic.
brown biscuits,
Oh, it's
fruit
blocking.
biscuits or biscuits brown, and you had a little sort of thing like this size. Where's that size there, Alex?
Yeah.
The size of a razor blade, and it was a tin opener.
Yeah.
Remember the old metal ones, Rupert? And you had to
Yeah.
cut and you used to get like in your rations packs cheese and stuff, and then
Processed cheese.
Dunkin' chocolate. Oh, it's beautiful.
I've also heard of is it an egg banjo
Oh, an
being?
egg banjo.
Oh, egg banjos are all right. You know why it's an egg banjo, don't you?
And do tell me.
Because if you eat an egg sandwich, what happens?
Oh, it falls out
Run
of
down,
you.
you
Runs down.
That's the banjo.
That's the egg banjo.
Oh, fantastic. Is that,
And it has to be a
Banjos.
nice fried runny egg too. And the thing is, back then when you guys were coming back from their bricks or multiples in Northern Ireland, the chef used to be up for 24 hours because we're constantly in and out, resupplying, getting back out. And you just run in, there was loaves of bread, there was margarine, there was that there. You went up to the chef and you say, oh chef, 2 or 3 egg banjos, slap it on, wallop it, full of sauce, halfway down your kit, mug of tea, bomb up, and away we go again.
Yeah.
That's the way it was.
no time.
Egg banjos.
No time to stop. Constantly moving.
No time. You should do it at the weekend. Get yourself a nice slice of whatever bread you like, and then get a nice big egg, put it in the frying pan, fry it up so it's nice and runny, put it inside the sandwich, and then experience it for yourself. There's nothing else would match it. It's quite nice actually. And then when you walk to the shop, if you go into military garrison, and if you have a nice big run of egg down your front, people look at you and respect you for it, Alex. Trust me.
And I think that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much, Scotty and Rupert, for sharing their stories about their time in the military. If you like this podcast, please like and follow Give Us Time social media pages. And we will be back very soon with a World Mental Health Day podcast. Thank you very much for listening.